Yeah, I did that with the Perl module. As I said, huge site Expedia orbits, because if something goes wrong and they issue you a ticket where they are missing $500, most likely they say, oh, it's our mistake, you go fly. But I mean, if you're doing that in a small travel agent and you have like a apprentice working in the travel agency and he made a mistake for $500, he's going to fight as much as he can to get those $500 he's missing, because it's probably coming out of his own pocket. So go after the big sites, because usually they're way better at dealing with this. Then I figured, okay, why should I actually search Expedia and everybody on my own? I could just go to meta search engines, kayak.com, vayama.com, idealo.de. There's so many different sites that are actually looking at all the different sites to begin with. So I just search those. Usually they have like Ajax and dynamic stuff, which makes it a bit more complicated, but the Perl module is pretty good. And I also started searching websites where I know that we had mistakes before, where I hope I can catch more mistakes in the future. Let me just check the time. Yeah, gonna be more than an hour.
We can take the other hour we just
resaved. Yeah. Anyway, I did it for better part of a year, but it ended up like Expedia, for instance, they are updating their software pretty much once a week. But they're not updating every different country, every point of sale the same week. But it's like, oh, this week we're doing the US. Then Germany is essentially usually most of the time the same week. And the French side is like, oh, it's going to take them at least 2 months to get it updated. And suddenly, instead of like having one piece of code that can deal with like 10 different Expedia sites, you start having like multiple versions for different countries. And it's really, sometimes you find interesting stuff, but usually you have to write the code to actually look for bugs that you already know about, so it doesn't yield the results that I wanted to have it. So, yeah, screen scraping might be legal, it's lots and lots of work, so what they think, okay, let's just go and find the human errors and go up in the global reservation systems and find something more interesting and, yeah, get around the booking engines. So, if we look at the reservation systems, what kind of errors would we expect? Usually there's something that's called in the community error fares or mistake fares. Somebody wanted to type $1,100, but just typed in $110, so that's like 90% savings right there. As I said, relaxed routing, you're supposed to take the direct flight, but nobody prevents you from taking a more scenic route. Combinations of flights, like the add-ons, that kind of stuff. Lots and lots of stuff that can go wrong. It's really, really hard to talk about everything that you can do. There's currently, like this week, there's what's called we'll come to that later, an open jaw way of saving fuel. Essentially, it's like transatlantic flights to the US for €200 that you can currently do. It's really easy, but it's not covered in this because in this one, I'm really just covering one mistake. How would you rate if something is a mistake or something is a good fare? Just as you would do with your supermarket, we say, okay, I'm just tracking beer prices. If a beer is like €1 per can every single week and suddenly it's 70 cents, oh, that's cheap. So you start inventing metrics for fares or for travel. What is cheap, what is not cheap, what's the difference? And in the frequent flyer community, usually it's cent per mile. You look at how much money do I have to spend to travel a single mile, because if you're collecting frequent flyer miles, miles are worth money, and if you have a metric that really relates directly to the money per distance, that comes in really handy. So cents per mile, it's pretty easy. Frankfurt JFK direct route, I mean, it doesn't take into account that you might take the scenic route through Asia. 3,800 miles, base fare is $80, so essentially you're paying 2 cents per mile on the base fare. 2 cents per mile is pretty nice for economy. If you're looking at websites, they have like in the references like FlyerTalk, milepoint.com, they most of the time quote the cent per mile even in the subject of the thread or something, just so that you know if it's good or it's bad. But sometimes they're factoring like frequent flyer bonus miles they're getting, they're just factoring in the base fare. Might be different routings involved, and or taxes, no taxes. So just because the value is really low doesn't really mean it's low for you. It's just for some random corner case where somebody else could fly, it might be low. So as good as KPI is, or the metric, it's not perfect. But cents per mile is a really good way. So if you start searching for fares automatically, you just calculate cents per mile and then figure out if it's good or not, and if you should have a second look at something. How would you decrease the cent per mile cost? Well, obviously, if I can fly more, because I'm not just flying Frankfurt to Dubai directly, but I'm connecting like Frankfurt and Zurich, I get more money and I fly more miles, or I get more miles, I fly more miles, but I'm still paying the same amount of money, so the CPM value goes down. What happened in a different, that's kind of broken. This one's broken. There was a deal from British Airways where they wanted to increase the fare from, it's two different ones. They wanted to increase the fare by $40, and instead of increasing by $40, they set it to $40. It was like a business class fare between like, it was New York, London to India and back.
Whoa.
For $40 base fare, it ended up being like $500 including all the taxes.
Well,
but for business class, that's not bad.
And two tickets to India.
British Airways actually made the news not just because they made the mistake that happens pretty much daily, but just because they said, okay, we're not going to honor this. We're going to cancel all the tickets.
Whoa.
And it's, I mean, you can take a lawyer. I would usually say, I mean, in the last couple of weeks, I had 2 hotel deals canceled up on me. I had a suite in the Hilton in New York for like $30 over New Year's Eve. They said, oh, it was supposed to be like $400. I said, yeah, I can understand. They give you travel credit towards the next day, so it's not bad. And another trip where they said, okay, this is like 75% rebate, you're not supposed to get this. Or another flight, and it's like, okay, this. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I don't care. But there's some people that actually take their lawyer out and they say, okay, start suing airlines. Doesn't make any sense from my point of view. So what I did is essentially the same. I used Trust My Pearl module. Look for a website where I can get access to reservation system, at least parts of reservation system for free. I can say a small round. It's Travelocity. Easy to find. If you look for it, you can just get lots and lots of information on the website that you won't be able to get on like Expedia, Orbitz, on other sites. It's interesting. If you want to figure out where to get information, there's a tool called the KBS tool. It's a couple of guys, they're selling a tool that is essentially just screen scraping free sources on the web for essentially the same information. They're presenting in a nice way, but they are charging money for that tool. So what you can probably do is you can just get a demo account for that tool, or first read about how they're behaving, what they're doing, because from my point of view, they're selling free information for money. But if you want, you can just fire up TCP dump and look what that tool is doing, and just go to the same website because they are not paying access for money for their access, and you can get it for free. You don't have to pay them if you don't want to. If you want to use it, use it. If you want to spend money, probably, in my opinion, go to expertfly.com. It's like $99 a year. It's totally worth it. Direct access to booking engines, like building up your own travel agency, gets kind of expensive, especially if you're paying per query. Like every time you're querying, it costs you money. If you're doing like I'm doing sometimes 20,000 queries a day, even if it's just a cent, I mean, you don't have any travel money left once you found something because it's just too expensive. To calculate the cents per mile, just to get the distance, I'm using a great tool called Great Circle Mapper. It's the ease in a tool to find like where routes are going and all that kind of stuff. And I'm also using a database to like have comparable data. Like okay, like in a supermarket example, like the beer usually is one euro per can, and this week is 70 cents. So I should alarm because it just got way much cheaper. I use SQLite just because it's easy, it's cheap. I can just move it around between different boxes. I had to do what's called area mapping. Airports are like in different areas: Europe, America, South America, Africa, Asia. Sometimes some fares look a bit misleading if they are within the same area. For instance, fares between Amsterdam and Hamburg, it's such a short flight. The cent per mile value on such a short flight doesn't really reflect the value. So sometimes I try to filter out like intra-European flights just to get the interesting stuff and filter out all the noise that's in there. For that, I have to have a mapping between airport names and the area or the continent they're in. I also need the distance, which I can easily go through, get from the Great Circle Map. I just have to do the query once and then store it in the database and then reuse it whenever I want. I want to have a database like the best price per route, like you have for your beer can in a supermarket. if you're like querying multiple supermarkets, what's the cheapest supermarket to go to if you just want to get this type of beer? And I also have, just because I can, a raw listing of all the fares that I've searched, but it's gotten way too many rows. I have like 65 million entries. I have like an SQLite database doesn't perform. Like the idea of, oh, I can just copy this file from one machine to another doesn't really work if it's a couple of gigabytes. So I'm now expiring my data. If you want to have the source code, it's on the website. And the benefit of having SQLite is if you have a graphical client, you can do all sorts of nice queries. Back in that day, I only had 6 million entries because it wasn't doing all the entries. Essentially, you have like all the different sources, Edinburgh, all the different airports, fare bases, airline, price, economy, travel months, all that kind of stuff, and it's a nice tool for SQLite databases. In SQL, you can do all sorts of interesting queries and just show whatever you want to see. Unfortunately, it's gotten so large that on my laptop I can't do it anymore because the database got too big. What did I find using that? I found an interesting fare from San Francisco to New York to Casablanca to Abu Dhabi. And back. If you look at all the prices, it's this is like 1650, 1860, 8,000 something, 11,000. These are really expensive, and suddenly 170 euros, 170 US dollars. Like, wow. Oh, if I compare to other destinations, like the Q fare is usually more expensive than K. It should be in the middle of these, in between those. So obviously somebody is missing a digit here. This has been loaded. Can I see it everywhere?
November 4th. No.
No, April 16th.
April 16th.
Yeah. It has been updated, so nobody dared to change it. It's really hard to get availability because you have to fly Delta Airlines at least to Casablanca, and then there's either Royal Air Moroccan or Etihad, which is pretty nice. But it's still there. I just checked a couple of days. You can still book it if you want. $170 plus some taxes for the return. Kind of interesting routing. So that's the kind of stuff you can just search and find just by looking at the cents per mile cost. There's some other metrics you can apply, like business or first class is you're willing to spend some more money or that kind of stuff. So it gets more complicated. If you look at the source code, there's way many more factors involved. There's some fares which claim they are economy, but in reality you're still sitting up front. It's like if you're working like for a US company, US government, or even for a German company, and they're saying, okay, our travel policy is that you have to travel in economy, but you can book your own travel. So the airlines figured that out, okay, we have so many people who have to fly economy, but how about we make a really, really expensive economy ticket? If you book it, the invoice would still say it's economy, it's just freaking expensive. And the small print in the fare will says, oh, it gives you an immediate update. And those fares are usually called an up fare, like queue up from queue picking class to like first class, that kind of thing. You can search for those, and you have to do more research on how to find those. The program does all that. It's pretty easy, but you have to factor in that some airlines aren't doing this system, other airlines are. Probably just use Exoplat because Exoplat just says, okay, this is business, this is first, this is on economy. Exoplat does all this stuff for you as well. But you cannot just screen scrape Exoplat because those guys are also paying per query. So if you start doing all the queries, they are probably going to terminate you.